Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. I'm sure somebody has said this to you before. I know I've heard it. You're acting like a child. You're acting just like a child. Well, guess what? We are all the time. We don't even realize it. We're acting on things that we experienced in our childhood, and that is piloting our adult life for good or bad. It could be holding you back from the most wonderful life you could be living. One little trauma episode from your childhood. Could be a little tiny trauma episode. We're going to talk about those traumas. It's a big thing. And a lot of us don't realize what's going on there and how it translates to you acting like a child today. She works with children and families as well. She's an amazing psychotherapist. She's got many different modalities in her wheelhouse. Susie Engel, live and direct from Connecticut, is back with us. How are you doing today?
Great, Steve. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Okay.
And
happy to be here.
As much as I've talked about this trauma thing before, it bears digging into again because it's so fundamental and so important in defining who we are. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When I think about it, there are certain hallmarks of the effects of certain experiences, not all experiences. And maybe you and I could have the same experience, but it could be traumatic for me, but not for you. And so I think it bears repeating that it's a subjective experience. And some of the hallmarks are, how has this experience affected self-worth? You know, if all of a sudden somebody becomes self-conscious after an experience, or if somebody feels alone, even if they're in a classroom or out in the community as an adult and feels so isolated and alone in their experience, I think those are two hallmarks of the trauma experience. And or maybe it's informative for people like me who are therapists to be able to say, maybe this person has undigested or unprocessed trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it presents itself in all different ways, and you might not be able to tie it back to an episode or a situation from your childhood. And like you said, subjective. Child A, child B, both 7 years old, both on the playground. Somebody says something. Could be the same thing. They could be large kids. I was bullied. I'm the fat kid. Call them the same name, but this one, it made an impact. This child, whatever, rolled off the shoulder, go away, and walk away. This one is now feeling self-worth as an adult, is feeling very vulnerable, is always looking at their appearance, is always worried that they're gaining weight, whatever it might be. It really depends on the child.
Yes. Well, and it depends on the attachment foundation for some. And that's probably like a whole nother month's worth of podcasts.
Well, you know what?
We'll integrate all that, right?
You said it. So let's talk about that for a second. Attachment.
Yes. Yeah. So really just think about the animal kingdom, or think about we as infants and caregivers attending to their babies and holding their babies heart to heart to help soothe their babies and to attach with their babies and let the baby know you're not alone in this world. If you're crying out, you don't have speech. So we have to figure out what you need. It may be a clean diaper. It may be food. It may be just you need a smile from us. And then as we hold our babies and tend to our babies, the babies also start to regulate. That's co-regulation. So here we have a trajectory of healthy attachment. And then in a short period of time, babies or infants learn to regulate themselves.
Mm.
Now, this is coming from parents who can also regulate themselves, right? So, who have figured out themselves, who know who they are, and feel very probably grounded and really just naturally paternal and maternal toward their baby. You know, so we go through tending to our baby, giving attachment and soothing, and then co-soothing, and then the baby learns to regulate more independently in time. And
And
that's healthy attachment.
would you say in time that, let's say, a child grows up to be an adult and has, there's some issues, we all do,
Yes,
that we're able to get past them with the right kind of therapy.
absolutely, absolutely. And really, most of what might be in air quotes the right type of therapy has a lot to do with building relationship between the client and the therapist and the client. You know, is there authenticity? Is there, you mentioned the word vulnerability. I've actually done a lot of work around vulnerability and believe it's just such a strength to be able
Hmm.
to be comfortable and vulnerable. And quite often I say capital A-N-D, and capital A-N-D, to be able to be this and that is great. I don't necessarily assume anymore that being vulnerable or feeling vulnerable is is a negative. I guess what I'm saying is not everything is binary. Not everything is good or bad, you know. So
Hmm.
so where am I going with this?
Well, how would you
Um,
you said the this or that in terms of vulnerability? Um, can you give an example of what this could be or that could be?
yes, I I mean I can give you a lot of examples, but one simple example might be um, college, a group of college students, and one person totally froze and failed an exam, or wrote an essay for an exam that differed from the professor's opinions or posits, and didn't score well on the exam. And we could have another student who also didn't perform well on the exam,
Hmm.
but carries great shame about it. And maybe one student might say, boy, I thought I nailed this. I thought my essay had a good argument. I realized it differed from the professors or whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be differing from but the person feels like, okay, maybe I need to study a little different or broaden my perspective or just figure this out for the next time. The other student may not want to share what they scored, which I understand. I mean, that's not the important thing. But the important thing is that another college student might carry um, more of a self punishing, shaming, and then dig themselves into some sort of rut about this
Hmm.
rather than realizing, you know what, I failed. I didn't prepare well, or I did prepare well and I failed. It's just not binary. But the vulnerability part is to be able to say, oh, I totally bombed it. I messed up and I've got to figure it out. And I'm a little bit like, I kind of want to talk to the professor just because I want to clarify if I did have a different opinion, you know, come on, dude.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, it's just very liberating to walk through life, or at least develop into a young adulthood and adulthood, to be able to say, you know what, I'm not really ashamed. I really did. I really made a big mistake, or I made a huge error at work the other day, or I spoke harshly with somebody, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know. that's a whole different flavor than saying, oh, if I'm vulnerable, I'm just going to cover it up and smooth it over and pretend that I'm not. That's like poison.
It is, because then you internalize it. You're walking around with something you didn't purge, and now you're on the inside. You're beating yourself up all the time.
Beating yourself up. And, I learn a lot I was just in session with a young person this morning in her early 20s, mid 20s. And she was just like, it's just amazing. You're like way up on cultural things than I am. And I was like, I have to be. I work with people of all ages. But we were laughing together about it. But guess what? I start hearing what the buzzwords are on the internet. And when people start feeling like a phony, or
Imposter.
oh, the imposter, that's what, yeah, the imposter syndrome, that's like a huge buzzword. And I can tell what the buzz, but being an imposter is almost self-creating.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to cover up anything. What do we have
No.
to cover up? We're all human.
Don't know the answer? Say you don't know the answer. I mean, that's like, I don't do sales, but that's one of the fundamental things in sales. If you're talking with a client or a prospective client, something comes up. Instead of you trying to dance around it, the best thing you can do is say, I don't know. Let me check on that. I don't have the answer. I'll get back to you. And then you on to the next thing. It's amazing when you look at those two words, imposter syndrome. It can show up in so many different areas. Now, the first one we think of is in your line of work. I'm doing this, but in your mind, I'm way over my head. I don't know if I should be here. I'm just kind of like making it up as I go along. Meanwhile, you might not know a couple of things, but you were hired for a reason. They didn't just hire anybody. I'm not going to pretend to be a heart surgeon. I won't even know what I'm doing.
Right.
And the imposter syndrome can also show up in relationships where you're kind of navigating along, but you're not really being yourself. You're not being authentic. You're not being, I don't want to say truthful, but real with the other person.
Really, yeah. And it's not really about like deceitful or truthful. It's just maybe that person in the relationship doesn't know himself or herself.
True.
And that creates, and then that comes back to the whole attachment and childhood experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we have healthy enough attachment, then we grow into life with a certain foundation of security about ourselves. And as we grow into life, we're also developing a relationship with ourselves. But a lot of times that kind of gets missed along the way. And then we find ourselves thinking, oh, I really want to write a book, but who am I to write a book? I'm also a chef. I cook all the same dishes that everybody cooks, but I bring my individuality to it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, that you're a foodie, you're a chef. You could be making lasagna. Lots of people make lasagna. Pick any dish, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
No, that's perfect.
You bring to it your flair. You might add a little more spice. You might maybe use a different brand of cheese that you feel kicks it up. And here, I believe we're going deep now. The most important thing is you put your energy into it. And I believe when you put a certain energy into it, people can taste it, people can feel it, people experience it in a different way. Same thing when somebody says, Grandma, when she makes something, she puts love into it and it tastes different.
Yes,
she's putting her energy into it. Same thing when you look at artists.
Yes.
Painters or music artists. There's millions of them. How come only some resonate over others? I believe it's the energy imprint that you're putting into it.
Absolutely. And I think that comes back, and I'm all for this conversation. And I'm sure we'll touch upon this in the future. The energy. We exude energy.
Yeah.
We have an electromagnetic field. I can walk out to the waiting room every 45 minutes or 55, depending on how long the session is, or if it's an hour and a half, whatever it is. And I might say, oh my gosh, I'm spacing out. I can't even remember who's next on the docket. And then I walk out, and even before I know who's out there, I can feel the energy. I can feel the person is stressed.
Oh,
The
yeah.
person is angry. The person is cool. I can feel it the minute I open the door. So, this is a very important thing.
Oh,
And when we
yeah.
put our energy into something, this is being authentic. This is being organic.
Hmm.
This is not thinking like, how am I supposed to do this to please this person, which is another big issue.
Hmm. Hmm.
But how do I do this the way I'm feeling it?
Yeah. Being you, and it's the energy. Some people say that salesperson I know. How do they get it? Like they make so many sales. How are they doing it? It's not that they're walking into the room a certain way. They have a certain energy that comes out that other people feel. And yes, they might be a more positive person. I've even tested this, Susie. I've gone to the gym, and you see the same people, don't even know who they are. They're just, working out, whatever. And I've intentionally said to myself walking in, raise your vibration, positivity, raise your vibration. Just think it, raise it on up. I'm not doing, my face is the same. I'm not doing anything different. I'll walk past the same people. They'll say hi to me. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? How's it going? I'm like, hey, how you? Hey, I don't know who they are. They didn't do that yesterday. I believe it's because I sent out an energetic signal. And I know we diverted here when we were talking about the traumas,
Yes.
but in a way, I think it has something to do with that, because if you don't figure out the energy thing, you're still wrestling with the trauma thing over here, and you can maybe get around some of your traumas by harnessing the power of your energy.
Yeah, or by saying, I'm struggling to do that. How come this person is kind of living life a little bit lighter? And then it's an indication maybe there's something that's unprocessed
Mm,
that we have to look at, and it's all interrelated,
yeah, it
it's
really
all
is.
yeah,
And it's, they always hear this term, flight or fight, and I think there's another one. There's three.
fight, flight, or freeze.
Ease. Thank you.
Yes.
Um, Imagine living your life in a state of fright.
Fight, flight, or freeze. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what happens with people who have experienced trauma and it's gone unprocessed or undigested. It's like you can see the level of reactivity or the level of vigilance
Mm.
or the level of isolation, because you don't know, like, if I do go out, who is trustworthy and who is not trustworthy. I mean, that's like just huge. And every client I work with, whether it's the first session or the second session, I make up some sort of story to help people understand how our neurosystem works. And when we are face to face with threat, a real threat, not like I'm anticipating a threat. When we're face to face with a threat, that part of the brain turns on, this shuts off. I'm sure you've heard this before. And then what do? We don't think it through or plan it through. We're reacting. And that's where we either attack, and it could be like an attack verbally towards somebody who disagrees with us.
Hmm.
We either run away or we freeze. And this is the animal kingdom, but we can, it's really great once we start figuring out, oh my gosh, I had a series of events in my life. Nobody really picked up on them when I was younger. So let's figure it out now so I don't walk around in fight, flight, or freeze.
I would even think that situation that presented itself most times isn't as much of a threat as you think it is.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not talking about dark alley, somebody pulls a knife. That's a threat.
Right.
Got a problem. I'm talking about, let's say somebody says something to you, or could be you have to give a presentation, biggest, fear, speaking before a crowd, and that
Yes.
you could feel threatened, like, but is it to you? It's a threat. To that person, yes, it is. But in the big picture of life, it really isn't a threat. But because of what you're holding on to from your past, it's a threat now.
Very good. Very good making that clear for the audience, especially because there's a difference between, for example, in the summertime, every day off, I like to drive to the shoreline, swim in the ocean, and then go about my day.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, there's so much marine life. Aren't you worried about sharks and this and that? And I say, no, I'm not worried,
Same.
which is anticipating a threat. But I can assure you, if ever I were face to face with a shark, I would feel scared to death.
You feel threatened.
Yes,
You would.
threatened. I would.
There's
But
no
that's
doubt.
the reality. But you see, I think it bears discussing, and I don't know how much time we have left, but people have gone through experiences usually in childhood.
Yeah.
And most children think this is normal, or there's something way deep in their gut that says something's off about it, but it happens over and over and over again. So pretty soon they get a little bit numb to it. And that's what starts this lack of self-awareness, I would say, or lack of consciousness, that no, I'm not threatened right here, right now. It's just haunting me. Or you said it earlier, how our early experiences fuel our present, right?
Yeah. And even to your point about the water. All right.
Yeah, swimming.
Yeah, I'm an adult. They're afraid to go into the water. I hear this from a lot of women. I'm just going to say I'm not judging, but this is but I speak in facts. I hear
Yes.
that, many women say, I'm not going in that water. If I can't see my feet, I don't feel comfortable, blah, blah, blah. Where does that come from? I'll bet you their childhood, and mom said something, and just being a mom or a dad said something, and then that has been implanted, or something that led to that. And I get it. Like, there was a time where I'd be a little worried about this. I don't blanking care. Put me in that water right now. Fantastic. And you know what? If I see a shark, I'll react as I need to. Hit him on the nose, poke him in the eye, or he'll chew me up.
In the nose. Yeah.
Whatever. But I'm going to deal with that when I have to deal with it. But in the past, I had anxiety as a kid, and I would have worried about that stuff. But I've done the work, and I'm like, I don't really care.
Right.
You know what I care about? It's going to rain. That's all. You could still go swimming, but it's like, yeah, really, I like to see the sun.
Right. Well, and I think you're bringing up a good point. It doesn't even have to be concrete. If somebody said, don't go in the water, it's dangerous. It could be something about like just somebody infusing in us just general fear and worry, or fear and anxiety. But I mean, anxiety is fear, but it's like anticipated fear. So it doesn't even have to be concrete about the ocean.
Right.
It could just be like nothing is safe because I was taught to be worrisome.
Yep.
Or taught to be, I mean, I don't know exactly what the word would be, but I was
influence
overprotected.
Overprotected. Thank you. Your mom could be very overprotective, and she had anxiety, and now life went on, and now that is how you roll until you figure it out. Or it could be somebody afraid to get on a plane, fear of flying.
Yes.
They don't worry that the plane's going to crash. They're worried about lack of control, or
Yeah.
they can't control. And I'm not talking about controlling the engine on the plane. I'm talking about
No,
you're
I
sitting
don't.
feeling like you're out of control. Like, what if anxiety comes up and I'm in this tin can at 30,000 feet? What am I going to do? We're out of time. I just looked up. It's like lightning.
You gotta go.
It speeds by.
It's great speaking with you. I think it all comes back to trust.
Yes. Yeah.
Which brings us back to attachment.
And also trusting yourself. And all of these things we'll dig into next time we get there.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. Lots
Really
to talk about.
Great. Oh my gosh.
Susie, how do we find you? If somebody's wrestling with anything that we've talked about, how do we locate you?
I would prefer people to reach out through my website. So it's my first initial S, last name Engel, and my title LCSW, licensed clinical social worker at Comcast.net.
Gotcha. And and your website is also your name too, right?
It's Susan Engel -LCSW.com.
Beautiful. Wonderful talking with you today. Need to get some recipes next time we get together, and we'll dig deeper. Sound good?
Oh yeah, I've got a whole mashup about that.
Right.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Speaking with you today.
You too. And thank you for all the insight. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.